Good morning, everyone. My name is Yasmin Hudson, and today I will be talking about one of the 5 pillars of literacy. The pillar that I would be talking about today is phonics. So, at the end of this discussion, you would be able to know what is phonics, the importance of phonics, the types of phonics, the historical background and cultural background of phonics, ways in which phonics aligns with the current educational trends and needs, and how phonics impact the modern education practice. So first of all, what is phonics? Phonics is the study of the systematic relationship between the sounds we hear in words and the letter that spell them, or to say it more technically, the systematic relationship between phonemes and graphemes. Phonics teaches the alphabetic principles, which is the relationship between letters and spoken language. When children understand the alphabetic principle, they understand that spoken words are composed of individual sounds and the letters that represent those sounds. Reading development is dependent on an understanding of the alphabetic principle. This understanding allows children to apply these sound-spelling relationships to both familiar and unfamiliar words. It is crucial for orthographic mapping and word-level fluency. Understanding phonics allows students to decode. Decoding is the act of sounding out words using phonics and the ability to apply knowledge of letter-sound relationship and letter patterns so that you can correctly pronounce written words. Successfully decoding occurs when a student uses phonics concept to accurately read a word. Did you know that the sound K can be spelled as C, K, or CK, or CH? Well, that is phonics. Phonics includes concepts such as phonies, graphies, short and long vowel sounds, segmenting and blending phonemes. The six syllables type including closed and open syllables, digraphs, trigraphs, two sound blends, vowel consonant E, which is a CVE, syllabication, and so much more. Okay, so now let's look at the different types of phonics. So the different types of phonics include the syntagmatic phonics, which teaches how to blend sounds from words. Then we have the analytic phonics that teaches us how to identify common sounding words. Then we have the analogy phonics that teaches us how to use familiar words to read new words. And the last one we have is the embedded phonics that teaches phonics with the context of meaningful text. So first of all, let's look. What is systematic phonics? In summary, systematic phonics starts with the phonies and builds up words. It focuses on explicit instruction of phonemes and graphemes and blending them to construct words. It is the most direct and structured method of phonics. But systematic phonics have some advantages and disadvantages. So let's look at some of the advantages of systematic phonics. First, it provides structure, which means it provides a very structured introduction to reading. This structure ensures no phonemes or graphemes are missed and students get through the instructions. Another advantage is it is good for manipulating language, which means this focus on blending and building words using phonemes that helps children when they come across or need to write unfamiliar words. This will be used to the process of blending phonemes or create words. Another advantage is its research-backed, meaning research constantly finds it to be the most effective method of teaching reading. So now let's look at some cons, which is some disadvantages of systematic phonics. First one is whole class, meaning learning of phonics and graphics tends to be done through whole class instruction rather than differentiated and individualized. Another one is decontextuated, meaning phonics and graphics are learned out of context and disconnected to words. This may confuse students and make them unsure about the purpose of the lesson. Another one. Let's look now at syntactic phonics. At analytic phonics. So let's see. Analytic phonics, it starts with words and break them down into phonemes. Usually the words are broken down into a beginning phonemes, which is the onset, and the ending phonemes that rhyme that need to be identified. So let's look at some advantages and disadvantages of analytic phonics. First advantage is it teaches sound in context, meaning songs are learned as parts of words rather than in isolation and decontextualized. Another one, it starts with familiar sounds, meaning teachers can start with words children are familiar with and use them to springboard for further teaching. Another advantage is it helps with decoding new words, meaning while systematic method is all about encoding, the analytic method emphasizes decoding, which is great for reading new and unfamiliar words. Let's look at some disadvantages now of analytic phonics. It uses guesswork, meaning children often get away with guessing phonemes. They will know either the onset or rhyme and guess the rest of the word rather than fully focusing on all phonemes in the word. Another disadvantage is some students slip behind, meaning because instruction is not as structured and direct as in the syntactic approach, some struggling students could slip behind and not understand what was taught. Another example of disadvantages is it is not as good for constructing words, meaning this focuses on the focus of this approach is on deconstructing rather than constructing words. Okay, so now let's look at analogy phonics. What is analogy phonics? Analogy phonics starts with words and break them down into phonemes. It is a branch of analytic words. It is a bunch of analytic phonics, but focuses on using groups of analogies, meaning similar words or word family, to build a child reading vocabulary. So let's look at some advantages and disadvantages of analogy phonics. Some advantages of analogy phonics is it builds a child vocabulary, meaning it starts with a familiar and builds on it to reach unfamiliar or less well-known words. Another example is it helps children identify pattern, meaning the repetition and clustering of words helps children learn patterns in the English language. Some cons now of an analogy phonics is, meaning it's guesswork. Just like the analytic phonics, analogy phonics, another example of disadvantage of analogy phonics is guesswork, meaning children often get away with guessing phonemes. They will know either the onset, meaning the beginning, or the ending of the word, and they will guess the rest of the word rather than focusing fully on all the phonemes in the word. Also, it is another disadvantage is it is not as good for constructing words, which means the focus of this approach is on deconstructing rather than constructing words. Okay, so now let's look at the last type of phonics, which is the embedded phonics. Embedded phonics focuses on teaching phonics in onothetic context. Lesson begins with a teacher reading a book and identifying teachable moments. So let's look at some advantages and disadvantages of embedded phonics. One advantage is its contextualized, meaning student learns about words and how to decode them while reading actual books. They can use image and surrounding sentence to infer what a word might be. Another advantage is it's good for practice, meaning once a child have learned the basic of phonics, they need a lot of practice. And when they stumble upon issue, they need reinforcement on those issues. This is where embedded phonics is helpful. Some disadvantages of embedded phonics is it is guesswork, meaning when students look at the context to understand a word, they are guessing rather than thinking about phonemic. Another disadvantage is it can be used in isolation, meaning it won't work alone. At some point, students need direct and structured instruction to follow. Okay, so now that we finished looking at the types of phonics, let's look at why phonics is so important. Phonics is so important because it allows children to read on their own. It builds a good print word dictionary that can be quickly accessed. It helps children develop general thinking skills such as problematic reasoning and reasoning by analogy. It also teaches children letter-sound relationship, which is important because English uses letters in the alphabet to represent sound. Another one, it significantly improves children's word recognition, spelling, and reading comprehension. Let's look at some historical and cultural background of phonics now. Okay, so phonics has a long narrative history, meaning there was a time when there was no phonemic alphabet as we know it. Written language in fact began with pictures that represent ideas. The most familiar example is Egyptian. But the invention of the alphabet, a set of symbols that represent not ideas but song, was a revolution of huge cultural proportions. Most historians attribute this innovation of the phonemicals, a race of commercial traders who need an easier way to communicate and conduct their businesses. Rather than having to learn thousands of different symbols representing all the different spoken words in the language, the invention of the phonemic alphabet allow the quick learning of a few symbols that could be parlayed into a multitude of words. Later Greek and Roman students were taught their language alphabet and how it was used to form words. Quintilian, the great Roman teacher of rhetoric, begins his institutes, written in the 1st century, with an account of how children should be taught the letters and sounds of the Roman language. The first challenges of the phonemic approach to reading in the United States came from people like Benjamin Franklin and Noah Webster during the founding period. They wanted to reform English spelling partly in order to iron out some of the language irregulation but also to standardize spelling across the different regions of the new nation. Their motivation was primarily patriotic. They wanted a uniform language with standardized spelling that would unite the nation not just politically but linguistically. Their attempts at such reform were met with little success. It was not until the middle of the 1800s, however, that any serious challenge was mounted against the diplomatic, was mounted against the dominant phonemic method of reading. Horace Mann, the father of American public schools, came back to America after a visit to Europe, determined to change the way reading was taught from a bottom-up approach in which letters and song were learned before words and a top-down approach in which words were learned first. Mann's method came to dominate the teaching of reading in many parts of the country and integrate the reading wars, as we have come to know them. This seemingly keenless contest between phonics and the whole word approach. Mann visited Europe during its historical brief flirtation with the child-centered romanticism advocated by figures such as Johann Heinrich and his students. This education romanticism most effective Germany and England. Mann was particularly impressed with the schools. Although those two countries had largely righted themselves by the mid-20th centuries, the whole word approach reasserted itself with a vengeance in America around the turn of the 20th century, with prominent educators such as Colonel Francis Winland Parker and influential Superintendent John Dewey and Dewey's teacher at Johns Hopkins University, G. Stanley Hall, all appealing the development in child psychology to press their case. But it was William S. Gray, Dean of University of Chicago School of Education, and Mr. Arthur I. Gates, the director of the Institution of Education Research at Columbia University, who were instrumental in the decades-long dominance of whole word reading. From the 1920s, when the Dewey's progressive schemes to dominate the nation's schools, whole word approaches regained supreme. It was the whole word or look-see approach that produced the popular Dick and Jane readers, developed by Gray for Scott Forsman Publishing and became familiar with several generations of American students. It was this approach that was salvaged by one of the most popular books on education ever written, Why Johnny Can't Read by Rudolph French, a book that landed like a bombshell in 1955 and has remained in continuous print ever since. The book launched a full-scale assault on the look-see reading method and regained the reading wars. That was continued to this day. Fletch, an editor at the Saturday Evening Post, one of the most popular magazines of that time, used his progressive skill as a popular writer to undermine the credibility of the whole word language approach. calling a Chinese approach to teaching English, pointing out that it tried to teach English, a phonemic language, as if it were a picture language like Chinese. To do this, he argued, was to abandon the numerous advantages phonemic language has over non-phonemic language. French widely read books discredited the whole word method among much of the reading public, but had limited effect on the education establishment, which for the most part refused change in emphasis on the look-see, a fact that French himself complained about in the sequel of his original book title, Why Johnny Still Can't Read, which was published in 1981. But despite the interest of the education establishment, the 50 years following the publication of Fletcher's first book saw the progressive deterioration of the credibility of the whole word approach. The next blow came with the publication in 1967 of Janie Call's Learning to Read. The great debate Call's credentials include the fact that she headed the Harvard Reading Laboratory. The book cataloged the mounting research in favor of early institution in phonics. Charles took a less phonemic approach to the issue than French had, cites a well-researched evidence in favor of phonics. The growing evidence put increasing pressure on those in charge of the nation's schools to rethink their loyalty to an approach that was beginning to lose its credibility even in the research community. Finally, in 2000, the National Reading Panel released its report, which was all but the last nail in the coffin of the view of the whole word approach to reading instruction best served in the interest of child, one of the largest research projects ever conducted. It reviewed all of the existing research on reading and found conclusively that early systematic instruction in phonics is the best way to teach children how to read. Although the panel report has not quietly all opposition to phonics, it has succeeded in breaking the death grip of the whole word approach on reading instruction in the nation's schools. Most reading instructions today, although couched in rhetorical balance and mixed approaches, at least reflect on acknowledgement and early training in letter sounding, corresponding, and the basic patterns of English spelling are essential to good reading instructions. Major education publishers have now aligned their programs to the reading panel's basic recommendation, partly because its status such as Carnegie and Texas, the largest purchasers of textbooks, now require phonics instruction. The contest over reading today resemble not so much a war as they do the clearing of the field after battle. The reading wars are over and phonics has won. The details about the best phonics methods still need to be worked out, but at least now we can read in peace. Alright, since we don't look at the historical and cultural background of phonics, let's look at the effectiveness of phonics. Good. So some effectiveness of phonics practice are, meaning it's a direct teaching in frequently short bursts. It is also consistently to approach. Another effectiveness is it secures systematic progress in phonics learning. It also maintains pace of learning, space of learning, It provides repeated practice, the application of phonics using match decoding books, early identification of children at risk of falling behind linked to provision of effective keep-up support. Phonics have been consistently found to be effective in supporting younger students to master the basic reading. According to national reading panels, students have shown excellent improvement in their phonics skill than those who do not study through phonics. So up to now, phonics is still effective then. Okay, so now let's look at how phonics impact the modern education practices. Phonics can impact the modern education practice by creating a diverse, or also by providing a variety of tools, resources, and manipulatives. Another one is by differentiated based on student needs, abilities, and interests, because not all children learn the same. All right. Let's discuss the ways in which phonics aligns with the current educational needs. First, it's a fundamental literacy skill, meaning phonics provides the foundation of reading and spelling by teaching the relationship between letters, which is graphemes, and their corresponding sound phonemes. This knowledge is essential for decoding words accurately. In today's education landscape, where literacy skills are fundamental, phonics remain a crucial component. Another one is inclusion and differentiation, meaning phonics for students with special education needs is designed to cater to a diverse range of learners, including those with specific learning difficulties, autism, moderate to severe learning difficulties, development language disorder, communication need, and complex need. It ensures that all students, regarding of their abilities, have access to high-quality phonics instructions. Another one is integration with other reading components, meaning while systematic phonics instruction is necessary, it should not stand alone. Educators must integrate it with other essential reading components. Phonemic awareness, meaning developing student awareness of individual phonemes, meaning sounds of spoken language. You have fluency, enhancing reading fluency through the practice of expressions and expression comprehension strategies, meaning teaching students how to understand and analyze context. A historical approach that combines these elements creates a comprehensive reading practice. Then you have the evidence-based practice, meaning research constantly informs education practice. However, recent studies have questioned the inclusivity focus on synthetic phonics, which emphasize on blending songs of foreign words as the sole approach. Education should consider a balanced approach that encourages both phonics and other effective strategies. Another one is adaptation to individual needs, meaning teacher must tailor phonics instruction to meet the unique needs of their students. For pupils with special needs, personalized adaptation, ensure that phonics aligns with their learning profiles and abilities. In summary, phonics remain relevant by adapting to diverse learners, integrating with other reading components, and staying informed by research. It equips students with the essential needs and skills for literacy success in today's education. Okay, now let's discuss some ways in which phonics align with the current educational trends. First is scientific evidence in phonics, meaning phonics refer to the systematic teaching of the relationship between sounds, which is phonies, and literographies. It emphasizes on decoding skills, enabling students to read by blending an individual sounds into words. Alignment, meaning it constantly supports the effectiveness of explicit phonics instruction when students learn the rules governing letter sound correspondence. They become more proficient readers. This aligns with the trends toward evidence-based practice in education. The second one is balanced literacy versus phonics, meaning balanced literacy combines various reading approach, including phonics, whole language, and meaning-based strategies. However, the debate over balanced literacy versus phonics continues. It aligns with the current education trend. While balanced literacy incorporates multiple approach, educators recognize the importance of explicit phonics teaching. Many schools now strike a balance by integrating both approaches, recognize that phonics plays a crucial role in the early reading development. The third one is international perspective, meaning syntactic phonics, which focuses on blending sounds to form words, has gained prominence globally, meaning countries like the United Kingdom have adopted systematic phonics as a core component of their literacy program. The emphasis on systematic phonics aligns with the international trends. The next one we have is combining phonics with whole text, meaning recent studies suggest that combining phonics instruction with explore to whole text, meaning books, enhance reading proficiency. It integrates both approaches, allow children to learn phonics while engaging with meaningful text, striking a balance between decoding skill and comprehension. Individualized instruction, meaning educational trends emphasize differentiated instruction to meet diverse students' needs. Phonics instruction can be tailored to individual learners, addressing specific gaps and promoting reading fluency. Teachers can adapt phonics lessons based on their student progress. In summary, phonics remains a vital component of effective reading instruction. Its alignment with evidence-based practice and flexibility implemented ensures that students acquire essential decoding skill while fostering a love for reading. So I think by now you have a better idea now about the history and all of that about phonics. So thank you for listening to me today. Bye.